Ambassador Dr. Sarah Chun stood before the massive crystalline doors of the Nexus of 1,000 Suns and felt smaller than she had ever felt in her life. The station hung in the void between stars like a jewel carved from frozen starlight. 47 alien species had built this place over millennia, and their combined knowledge and power radiated from every surface. Sarah adjusted her formal diplomatic uniform and checked her neural translator one last time. Everything had to be perfect. Humanity had worked for 3 decades to earn this audience, and she would not waste it. The doors opened without sound, and Sarah walked into the council chamber. The room stretched upward into darkness, and around her sat representatives of species so ancient that Earth had still been cooling when they first reached for the stars. The Vrin ambassador sat directly across from her position, and his chitinous faceplates reflected the ambient light like polished obsidian. The archons floated in their containment spheres to her left, and their energy forms pulsed with colors human eyes were never meant to perceive. Dozens of other species filled the chamber, and all of them watched her with expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed contempt. Ambassador Chun of Earth, the herald announced in a voice that bypassed her ears and spoke directly into her mind. You may present your petition. Sarah stepped forward and activated her holodisplay. Honored members of the Galaxy Council, she began. Humanity comes before you seeking formal inclusion in the Confederated systems and requesting protected status for our established space routes. A ripple of what might have been amusement passed through the chamber. The Vrin ambassador leaned forward and his mandibles clicked together in a pattern Sarah's translator identified as dismissive laughter. Protected roots, he said, and his voice carried the weight of someone addressing a child. Your species has been traveling the stars for barely 30 years, and you request the same privileges as civilizations who have maintained order for 10,000. Sarah kept her expression neutral, though her heart hammered against her ribs. We have established 17 colonies across 12 systems, she replied. Our merchant vessels require safe passage to support those populations. Your colonies, the Vrin ambassador interrupted, occupy systems that fall within traditional Vrin mining territories. Sarah felt ice slide down her spine, but she had prepared for this. Those systems were unclaimed when we surveyed them, she said, and brought up her evidence files. Furthermore, we have documented proof that Vrin mining operations have been conducted in the asteroid fields we legally claimed under the Frontier Settlement Accords of 2187. The chamber fell silent. Sarah displayed cargo manifests and sensor logs and testimony from 3 separate human outposts. All of it pointed to the same conclusion. The Vrin had been illegally mining human-claimed resources for at least 5 years. The Vrin ambassador rose to his full height, and his exoskeleton scraped against his chair with a sound like grinding stone. You dare accuse the Vrin collective of theft, he hissed. I accuse the Vrin of violating the same accords this council claims to uphold, Sarah replied. She knew she was pushing hard, but humanity had not come this far to be bullied by species who saw them as inferior. The Vrin ambassador's eyes blazed with fury. Then I invoke the right of challenge, he declared. The chamber erupted in surprised murmurs. Sarah's translator worked overtime to parse the dozens of alien languages, but one phrase came through clearly in all of them. This was unprecedented. The herald raised one appendage for silence. The Vrin ambassador has invoked an ancient right. The herald explained to Sarah. It is a method of settling disputes through direct contest between representatives. Sarah's diplomatic training kicked in, and she analyzed the situation in seconds. Refusing would make humanity look weak and validate every species who thought humans were too primitive for galactic society. Accepting meant facing whatever challenge the Vrin proposed, but it also meant standing on equal ground. I accept, Sarah said. The Vryn ambassador's mandibles spread wide in what Sarah recognized as a predatory smile. "Excellent," he said. "We shall settle this through Kazran, the ancient debate of minds." Sarah felt her confidence waver. She knew nothing about Kazran. The herald began explaining the rules, and Sarah's blood turned cold as she listened. Kazran was not a verbal debate, but a neural combat conducted in a virtual arena constructed from pure thought. Two minds would enter a shared mental space and construct arguments as living constructs that would battle until one participant conceded or their mental defenses collapsed. "There are safety protocols," the herald assured her. "The neural interface will prevent permanent damage." Sarah wanted to refuse, but she had already accepted the challenge, and backing out now would doom humanity's petition. She nodded and allowed the technicians to fit the neural crown to her head. The Vryn ambassador received his own interface, and his expression radiated confidence. His species had been doing this for thousands of years. Sarah closed her eyes as the system activated. The council chamber disappeared, and she found herself standing in a vast, empty space that stretched infinitely in all directions. The Vryn ambassador materialized across from her, and his mental avatar was even more imposing than his physical form. "You should have stayed on your little blue world," he said. Then the battle began. Sarah constructed her arguments as walls of logic and reason. The Vryn shattered them with millennia of legal precedent. She formed new strategies and adapted human diplomatic theory into weapons. The Vryn countered everything she created. But Sarah noticed something. The neural interface felt wrong. The pressure against her mind was far stronger than the herald had described. She tried to disengage, but the system did not respond. The Vryn ambassador's avatar grew larger, and his mental attacks became vicious. "Did you truly think we would let you challenge us?" he said. "Your species is an infestation, and this council will never grant you equality." Sarah realized with horror that the safety protocols had been disabled. The Vryn were killing her. She tried to scream, but her voice was lost in the mental maelstrom. Her defenses crumbled, and her consciousness began to fracture. The last thing Sarah Chun thought before her mind shattered was that Earth needed to know. They needed to know what the Council really thought of humanity. They needed to know that peace was never an option. In the Council chamber, Sarah's physical body convulsed once and then went still. Medical technicians rushed forward, but they already knew what they would find. Her brain activity had flatlined. The neural crown had burned through her synapses like fire through paper. Ambassador Dr. Sarah Chun was brain dead. The Vryn ambassador removed his interface and shook himself as though brushing off dust. An unfortunate accident, he declared. The human was not prepared for the rigors of Kazran. The council deliberated for less than an hour. They ruled the death accidental and offered Earth 100,000 credits in reparations. The decision was transmitted to Earth via quantum relay. The council expected protests or perhaps angry demands for investigation. They expected humanity to accept their inferior position and retreat back to their small corner of the galaxy. What they received instead would haunt them for the brief remainder of their civilization. Earth's response was a single line of text that appeared on every council communication system simultaneously. Protocol Annihilation has been authorized, and you have 72 hours to comply with our demands. The council dismissed it as the impotent rage of a lesser species. They had no idea that humanity had been preparing for this exact scenario since the day they first encountered alien life. They had no idea that the prey they thought they had cornered was actually the most dangerous predator the galaxy had ever seen. They would learn soon. The entire galaxy would learn what happened when you killed a human envoy. The countdown had begun. The United Earth Government received the Council's transmission at 0347 hours Greenwich Mean Time. President Catherine Okonkwo was awakened in her private quarters and escorted to the Situation Room 3 levels below the surface. Every member of the Security Council was already there, and their faces told her everything she needed to know before anyone spoke. Sarah Chun is dead, Defense Minister Liu said without preamble. The medical data is conclusive, and our intelligence confirms. The Vrins sabotaged the neural interface. Catherine felt her hands clench into fists. Sarah had been her friend long before either of them entered politics, and they had shared the same dream, a humanity that stood equal among the stars. "Show me everything," Catherine said. For the next hour she reviewed intercepted communications and sensor logs and the testimony of 3 human observers who had been present at the Nexus. The picture became clear, and it was worse than murder. The Galaxy Council had planned this. They had been waiting for an opportunity to put humanity in its place, and Sarah's accusations against the Vrin had given them the perfect excuse. "We have more," Intelligence Director Zhao said, and activated another set of files. "These are communications we intercepted over the past 6 months." Catherine read through message after message. Council species discussing the human problem and debating how to contain Earth's expansion. Plans to blockade human trade routes. Proposals to destroy human colonies and claim it was done by pirates. The Council saw humanity as a threat, and they intended to eliminate that threat before it grew too large. They were always going to do this, Catherine said quietly. Sarah's death was just the opening move. "What are your orders, Madam President?" Admiral James Okonkwo asked. Catherine looked at her younger brother and saw the same cold fury she felt reflected in his eyes. The Okonkwo family had lost too many people to senseless violence. Their parents had died in the resource wars. Now Sarah was gone too. "Activate Annihilation Protocol," Catherine said. The room went silent. Every person present knew what those words meant. Humanity had prepared for this scenario since first contact with alien life 30 years ago. The lesson had been learned through centuries of human warfare. Hope for peace, but prepare for total war. When Earth's ships first encountered the Vrin Scouts and realized they were not alone in the universe, humanity had celebrated. But Earth's military leaders had not celebrated. They had immediately begun planning for the possibility that the aliens would be hostile. Those plans had evolved over 3 decades into something far more comprehensive than anyone outside this room knew. "Are we certain?" General Park asked. "Once we begin, there is no going back. They killed our ambassador, and they plan to destroy our colonies." Catherine replied, "We are certain." She entered her authorization code into the system. Admiral Okonkwo entered his. One by one, the other members of the Security Council did the same. When all codes were confirmed, the system activated and signals began transmitting to every human military installation in colonized space. Across 12 star systems, humanity's hidden forces came to life. On Mars, the Fourth Fleet powered up reactors that had been idle for 15 years. In the asteroid belt, construction yards that were supposedly building civilian mining equipment revealed their true purpose. They had been building warships, hundreds of warships. The colony on Proxima Centauri B opened massive underground hangars and launched fighter squadrons that officially did not exist. Deep space monitoring stations transformed into armed fortresses. Sleeper ships that had launched a decade ago, claiming to be scientific expeditions, received activation codes and their crews opened sealed orders. They were not scientists, but special forces operators. Their ships were not research vessels, but stealth attack craft carrying enough firepower to level cities. Every single one of them had been waiting for this moment. Earth's orbital defenses came fully online and revealed weapon systems that made the public defense grid look like a toy. The Luna Military Academy, which everyone thought was just a training facility, deployed 3 full battle groups. Catherine watched the status boards light up green as unit after unit confirmed activation. "How many ships do we have?" she asked. 4,317 warships. Admiral Okonkwo reported, "That does not include support craft or drone carriers." Council analysts who had somehow gained access to human military assessments had estimated Earth possessed perhaps 50 to 70 combat vessels. They were off by 2 orders of magnitude. Composition, Catherine asked. 142 dreadnoughts and 631 heavy cruisers and 1,200 destroyers. The admiral continued, the rest are frigates and corvettes and specialized vessels. Catherine allowed herself a cold smile. The council thought humanity was weak because humans had only been in space for 30 years. They did not understand that 30 years was more than enough time when you approached the problem with human efficiency. Earth had not wasted time building monuments or establishing complex bureaucracies. They had built weapons. What about the special projects? Catherine asked. All 5 Sword of Damocles platforms are operational. Defense Minister Liu reported, the Prometheus array is charged and the Ghost Fleet is in position. These were humanity's secret weapons, and the Council had no idea they existed. The Sword of Damocles platforms were orbital railgun installations, capable of accelerating projectiles to 40% light speed. At that velocity, a simple tungsten rod became a planet killer. The Prometheus array was an experimental weapon system based on captured Council technology and improved with human engineering. The Ghost Fleet was something entirely different, and even Catherine was not fully briefed on its capabilities. Send the message, Catherine ordered. Admiral Okonkwo composed the transmission himself. It was simple and direct and utterly uncompromising. The Galaxy Council has sanctioned the murder of our representative. And this is an act of war, and you have 72 hours to surrender the Vryn leadership and dissolve the Council, and failure to comply will result in total annihilation of all Council military assets and governing stations, and we will not negotiate. And we will not forgive, and we will not stop. The message was transmitted via every communication channel humanity possessed. It appeared on Council data networks and on public broadcasts and on military frequencies. It was translated into every known alien language. There would be no confusion about humanity's intent. On the nexus of 1,000 suns, the Council received the message and dismissed it immediately. They have perhaps a dozen warships, the Vryn ambassador laughed, and they speak of annihilation. Should we increase patrols? An Archon representative asked. Unnecessary, the herald replied. Humanity cannot threaten us, and they will calm down once they accept reality. The Council went back to their normal business. They had more important matters to discuss than the tantrum of an inferior species. Back on Earth, Catherine watched the countdown clock, 72 hours. She hoped the Council would surrender, but she knew they would not. Species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia did not bow to upstarts. Admiral, she said, begin moving our forces into position. And when the timer reaches 0, I want overwhelming force applied to every Council military installation simultaneously. Understood, Madam President, Admiral Okonkwo replied. He left to coordinate the largest military operation in human history. Catherine remained in the Situation Room and stared at Sarah Chun's photograph on the memorial wall. They should have listened, she said quietly. Around Earth and across human space, thousands of ships began their silent journey toward Council territory. They moved using stealth systems that made them invisible to Council sensors. They traveled in complete radio silence. The Council would not see them coming. The 72 hours passed with agonizing slowness. The Council sent exactly one reply, a formal rejection of Earth's demands and a warning that continued hostility would result in sanctions. Catherine read the message and felt nothing. They still do not understand, she said. Admiral Okonkwo stood beside her. They will, he promised. The countdown reached 0. Execute, Catherine ordered. Across 200 light years of space, humanity struck with precision that no Council species had ever witnessed. The battle for the galaxy had begun, and the Council was about to learn that humanity had not spent 30 years in space learning to coexist. They had spent 30 years preparing to win. The Vryn Defense Station Guardian's Pride had protected the approaches to Vryn Prime for 800 years. Its energy shields could withstand direct hits from capital ship weapons, and its plasma batteries could reduce enemy fleets to superheated gas. The station commander was reviewing routine patrol reports when his sensors detected something impossible. 16 contacts had appeared at maximum range, then 32, then 96. Impossible, the commander said. Nothing that large should appear without transition signatures. Vryn ships required nearly an hour to spin up their FTL drives after arriving in a system. The energy discharge was visible across half a star system. But these ships had simply appeared as if they had been there all along. Launch fighters and charge all batteries, the commander ordered. Transmit distress signal to Fleet Command. The human ships did not slow down. They did not attempt communication. They simply opened fire. The first salvo consisted of 200 railgun rounds accelerated to relativistic speeds. Guardian's Pride shields flared to life, but shields designed to stop energy weapons were useless against solid projectiles moving at 40% of light speed. The tungsten rods punched through the shields like they were not there. Each impact released energy equivalent to a nuclear weapon. Guardian's Pride disintegrated in a flash of vaporized metal. 800 years of service ended in 14 seconds. Similar scenes played out across Vryn space. Defense platforms that had never failed suddenly failed catastrophically. Patrol groups vanished from sensors as human missiles found them. The Vryn home fleet scrambled to respond, but they were designed to fight enemies who used the same technology they did. Admiral James Okonkwo commanded the Terra Invicta battle group from the bridge of the dreadnought Unstoppable. Around him 200 human ships moved in perfect coordination. "Target the orbital shipyards," he ordered. "I want nothing larger than a shuttle left intact." The Vryn shipyards were massive construction platforms that had built warships for 1,000 years. Human targeting systems identified weak points that Vryn engineers did not even know existed. Missiles streaked across the void, and each one carried guidance systems that could predict enemy defensive fire and adjust their approach in microseconds. The shipyards exploded in sequence like fireworks. "Sir, the Vryn dreadnought Eternal Conquest is moving to intercept," his tactical officer reported. "Show me," Okonkwo said. The Eternal Conquest was the pride of the Vryn fleet, and its energy shields were legendary. It had never been damaged in combat. "Load special munitions," Okonkwo ordered. "Let us see how their shields handle a Nova torpedo." The Nova torpedo was a human innovation that the Council would have banned if they had known it existed. It was a missile carrying a miniature fusion reactor set to overload on impact. When it struck the Eternal Conquest's shields, the resulting explosion was visible from the planet's surface. The shields held for exactly 3 seconds. Then they collapsed and the secondary explosions tore through the dreadnought's hull. The Eternal Conquest broke apart and its reactor went critical. The death of the flagship sent shockwaves through the Vryn fleet. "Sir, we are receiving surrender requests from multiple Vryn vessels," the communications officer reported. Okonkwo considered it. "Denied," he said. "They did not accept Ambassador Chum's surrender, and we will not accept theirs." It was harsh, but it was necessary. The galaxy needed to see that humanity's threats were not empty. The Battle of Vryn Prime lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Vryn home fleet had been completely destroyed. Every orbital installation was gone. Every military satellite was debris. The Vryn civilization had been knocked back to pre-spaceflight capability in a single engagement. Okonkwo transmitted his message to the planet below. The Vryn Collective murdered a human ambassador under flag of truce, and your leadership chose to do so with the Council's blessing, and now you pay the price. and you are confined to your homeworld, and any attempt to rebuild orbital capability will be met with immediate destruction in food and medical supplies will be provided because humanity does not make war on civilians. But you will remember this day, and you will remember what happens when you underestimate us. Similar battles raged across Council space. At the nexus of 1,000 suns, the Council finally realized the magnitude of their mistake. "How many ships do they have?" the Herald demanded. "Our latest count is over 4,000, an Arkham military advisor reported, and they are using weapons we have never encountered." The Archon sovereignty scrambled their defense fleet. 300 ships representing the finest military technology in the known galaxy. They met the human Fifth Fleet in the Andros Nebula. The Archons opened fire with plasma lances that could cut through asteroid fields. The human ships scattered and reformed, using maneuvers that should have been impossible at those speeds. "They are using AI guidance," the Archon fleet commander realized. The Council had banned military artificial intelligence 3,000 years ago, after a war that nearly destroyed half the galaxy. Humanity had not been part of that agreement. Human ships carried quantum computers, running combat algorithms that processed battlefield data faster than any organic mind. Each ship knew where every enemy would be 3 seconds before they moved. The Archons tried to adapt, but adaptation required time, and human weapons did not give them time. Missiles that thought for themselves, railguns that fired automatically at optimal intervals, drone swarms that reformed after each attack. The Archon defense fleet was annihilated in 40 minutes. Across the galaxy, species that had stood united under the Council began to fracture. The Kelhari recalled their fleets to defend their homeworld. The Threxian clans declared neutrality. The Syndra Collective began jamming Council communications. On the Nexus, the Council convened an emergency session. "We must negotiate," one representative said. "We cannot negotiate from a position of weakness." The Vrin ambassador replied, "We must show strength." "What strength?" an Archon shouted. "They have destroyed 60% of our military capability in 3 weeks." The argument raged for hours. Finally, the Herald called for order. "We will send a delegation to Earth," the Herald announced, "and we will discuss terms." Admiral Okonkwo received the transmission and forwarded it to President Okonkwo. "What do you think?" Catherine asked her brother. "I think they are stalling," James replied. "They hope we will stop attacking while negotiations proceed. Then we continue," Catherine decided. She drafted the response herself. The Galaxy Council demanded 72 hours, and we gave them exactly that time. And they refused, and now we give them nothing. And there will be no negotiations. And there will be no delegations, and there will only be total unconditional surrender, and the Council will disband, and its leadership will face trial, and you have 1 week to comply, or we will demonstrate that our previous actions were only a warning. The message was transmitted. The Council did not respond. Instead, they began gathering their remaining forces for a final defense of the Nexus. Catherine watched the intelligence reports. "They are going to try to make a stand," she said. "Let them." Admiral Okonkwo replied, "We have been holding back our most advanced weapons, and it is time they see what humanity can really do." In deep space, 3 vessels that had remained hidden throughout the conflict received new orders. They were the Sword of Damocles platforms. Each one was an orbital railgun capable of accelerating projectiles to near light speed. Their targets were the Council's primary military production facilities. The platforms fired simultaneously. The projectiles crossed hundreds of light years in hours. When they impacted their targets, the explosions were visible across entire sectors. 3 shipyards that had built Council vessels for 5,000 years simply ceased to exist. The message was clear. Humanity could reach anywhere in the galaxy and destroy anything they chose. Distance was not protection. Time was not an ally. The Council's remaining military commanders looked at their strategic displays and saw inevitable defeat. Some began planning desperate final strikes. Others began planning escape. A few began planning surrender. But all of them knew the truth. Humanity had won. The only question was how much more the Council would suffer before admitting it. Admiral Okonkwo stood on the bridge of Unstoppable and looked at the tactical display. Red markers indicated Council forces. Blue markers showed human ships. The red markers were dwindling. "Sir," his executive officer said, "we are receiving reports that several Council species are beginning to surrender individually. Document it all." Okonkwo ordered, "But continue the offensive and evasive. Council must surrender as a whole or not at all." The officer acknowledged and returned to his station. Okonkwo looked at the memorial plaque mounted on the bridge. It bore Sarah Chun's name and a simple inscription. "She went in peace, and they responded with murder, and we respond with justice." The battle continued. The Sovereign Light Station hung in the darkness between stars and inside its crystalline halls. The Galaxy Council faced extinction. The Archon High Council had called an emergency session, and representatives from 32 remaining allied species gathered in the chamber. 15 species had already withdrawn from the alliance. "We are losing," the Herald said, and there was no point in pretending otherwise. The tactical displays showed human forces advancing across every front. Council fleets retreated or were destroyed. Trade routes were cut. Colonies were isolated. In 5 weeks, humanity had accomplished what should have taken years. "How is this possible?" a Kalahari representative demanded. "They are a single species and barely spacefaring." "They are more than that," an Archon military commander replied. "Our intelligence has been catastrophically wrong, and they have been preparing for this war since first contact." The commander brought up intercepted communications and recovered data cores from destroyed human ships. The picture that emerged was terrifying. Humanity had spent 30 years building the largest military force in galactic history. They had done it in secret. They had done it efficiently. They had done it with a level of coordination that suggested their entire civilization was focused on a single goal: survival through overwhelming force. "We must sue for peace," a Threxian clan leader said. "From what position?" the Vryn ambassador demanded. "They reject all communication, and they have stated their terms. Total surrender." "Then we surrender," several voices said at once. "Unacceptable," the Archons replied. The Archon species were the eldest in the Council and had led it for millennia. They had never surrendered to anyone. "There is another option," the eldest Archon said. The chamber fell silent. "You cannot mean—" the Herald began. "The Omega device," the Archon confirmed. Horror rippled through the assembled representatives. The Omega device was forbidden technology from the ancient wars. It could sterilize entire star systems and leave nothing but dead worlds. The Council had kept one device as a deterrent and sworn never to use it. "If we deploy it against Sol, we eliminate the human homeworld," the Archon explained, "and without Earth, their colonial forces will collapse." "That is genocide," a Kalahari representative protested. "They are committing genocide against us," the Vryn ambassador countered. "They have destroyed the Vryn Collective and confined us to our homeworld." "You murdered their ambassador," someone shouted back. The chamber erupted into arguments. Species accused each other. Old grudges surfaced. The unity that had held the Council together for 10,000 years was fracturing. Finally, the Herald called for order. "We will vote," the Herald announced. "Deploy the Omega device against Earth or surrender unconditionally." The vote was close. 18 species voted to deploy. 14 voted to surrender. The device would be deployed. A stealth ship was prepared in the deepest levels of Sovereign Light. The Omega device was loaded into its cargo bay. The ship's crew consisted of volunteers who knew they were likely going on a one-way mission. The humans have impressive sensor networks, the ship's captain said, but our stealth technology has been refined over thousands of years, and we will reach Earth and deploy the device before they know we are there. The ship launched and slipped into FTL without transition signature. It would take 2 weeks to reach Seoul. The Council waited and hoped that this desperate gamble would save them. But humanity's intelligence network was more sophisticated than the Council knew. On Earth, Intelligence Director Zhao was reviewing intercepted communications when she noticed something. Sovereign Light's power grid had shown an unusual spike. Deep facility access codes had been activated. A ship had launched using a trajectory that avoided all normal shipping lanes. "Bring this to the President immediately," Zhao ordered. 30 minutes later, Catherine Okonkwo was reading the analysis. "They are sending something to Earth," Zhao explained, "and they are using their best stealth technology to do it." "What do you think it is?" Catherine asked. "Based on the power consumption and the security protocols, I believe they are deploying a doomsday weapon." Zhao replied, "We have intelligence suggesting the Council possesses something called the Omega device." Catherine felt ice in her veins. "Can we stop it?" she asked. "Our deep space monitoring network detected a slight gravitational anomaly along the projected course." Zhao said, "We can intercept." "Do it," Catherine ordered, "and I want that device intact if possible." The orders went out immediately. Commander Zara Osei commanded the stealth corvette Shadowhunter. Her ship was one of humanity's most advanced and equipped with sensors that could detect the ripples a ship made as it moved through space-time. "We have a lock," her sensor officer reported. "The target is exactly where intelligence predicted. Match velocity and prepare boarding teams," Osei ordered. Shadowhunter carried a full Special Forces platoon. They were equipped with cutting-edge combat gear and trained for ship-to-ship operations. The human ship ghosted alongside its target. The Council stealth ship had no idea it had been found. Breaching in 3, 2, 1, Osei counted down. Magnetic clamps seized the Council ship, and plasma cutters burned through the hull. The Special Forces team poured through the breach. The Council crew tried to resist, but they were scientists and engineers. They were not soldiers. The fight was over in minutes. "Secure the cargo bay," Osei ordered. Her team found the Omega device, and its appearance made Osei's blood run cold. It was a perfect sphere 3 meters in diameter and covered in ancient symbols. Power readings suggested it was already armed. "Disarm it," Osei ordered her tech specialist. "Ma'am, I do not know how," the specialist replied. "This technology is completely alien." Osei made a decision. "Then, we take it intact," she said. "Load it onto our ship and prepare to head back to Earth." The transfer took 6 hours. Every minute Osei expected the device to detonate, but it remained stable. Shadowhunter returned to Earth with its terrifying cargo. The Omega device was taken to the most secure research facility humanity possessed. Scientists and engineers swarmed over it. They had 2 goals: understand how it worked and prevent it from detonating. After 72 hours of intense study, they succeeded. Not only did they disarm it, but they reverse-engineered the operating principles. Human scientists took technology that had taken the Archons thousands of years to develop and improved it in 3 days. "We can build our own version," the lead scientist reported to President Okonkwo, "and we can make it better." Catherine looked at the weapon and considered the implications. "How many can we build?" she asked. "As many as you want," the scientist replied. "We have the materials and the facilities." Catherine made her decision. "Build 50, she ordered, "and make sure the Council knows we have them." The production began immediately. Earth's industrial base had been geared toward military production for 3 decades. Creating 50 planet-killer weapons took less than a week. Admiral Okonkwo took personal command of the mission to deliver humanity's response. He brought 10 dreadnoughts and 50 support vessels to the edge of Sovereign Light's defensive perimeter. "Transmit on all frequencies," he ordered. The message was simple. The Galaxy Council attempted to deploy a doomsday weapon against Earth, and we captured it intact, and we have reverse-engineered it and improved it, and we now possess 50 Omega-class devices, and we can deploy them against any target in the galaxy, and you attempted to exterminate us, and you failed, and now you will surrender unconditionally. Or we will demonstrate what extinction truly means, and you have 24 hours and choose wisely." To emphasize the point, Okonkwo deployed one of the devices, not against a populated world, against an abandoned system on the edge of Council space. The Omega device activated, and its effects were broadcast across every communication channel. The star went nova. The planets were vaporized. In 10 minutes, an entire solar system ceased to exist. On Sovereign Light, the Council watched in horror. "They can destroy us all," the Herald said quietly. "Then we surrender," the Kalahari representative said, "and there is no other choice." The Archons tried to argue, but even they could see the truth. Continued resistance meant extinction, not just defeat, complete annihilation. Every species represented on the Council faced the same calculation: surrender and survive, or fight and die. The vote was unanimous. The Council would surrender. But first, they sent one final message to Earth. "We surrender unconditionally, and we request terms, and we ask for mercy." Catherine read the message and felt no satisfaction. Sarah was still dead. Thousands of humans had died in the fighting. But the war was won. "Transmit our terms," Catherine ordered. Admiral Okonkwo sent the response. "The Galaxy Council will disband immediately, and all Council leadership will surrender for trial, and all Council military forces will stand down, and any species that wishes to join a new galactic alliance under human leadership may petition for membership, and those who refuse may remain independent. But acts of aggression between species will not be tolerated, and these terms are non-negotiable, and you have 12 hours to comply." The Council had no choice. They began the process of dissolution. 10,000 years of galactic order ended not with debate, but with humanity's overwhelming display of force. Admiral Okonkwo watched from his command deck as Council ships began powering down their weapons. "Sarah," he said quietly, "we did it, and they will never threaten us again." The war was over. Humanity had won. Now came the harder part: building a peace that would last. The occupation of Sovereign Light began at dawn on what the station's inhabitants called the Day of Silence. Human Marines in powered armor marched through corridors that had seen 10,000 years of galactic governance. There was no resistance. The Council had surrendered completely. Admiral James Okonkwo stood in the central chamber where Ambassador Sarah Chun had died and looked at the empty seats. The representatives had all been taken into custody. The station's administrative functions had been transferred to human control. "It feels wrong," his executive officer said. "We are not conquerors." "No," Okonkwo agreed. "We are survivors, and there is a difference." The trials began 3 weeks later. President Catherine Okonkwo insisted they be public and broadcast across the galaxy. Every species needed to see that justice would be done. The Vrin ambassador was tried first. The charges were simple: murder of a diplomatic envoy and conspiracy to commit genocide. The evidence was overwhelming. Intercepted communications showed he had planned Sarah Chun's death weeks in advance. Technical analysis proved he had personally disabled the neural interface safety protocols. "How do you plead?" the human judge asked. The Vrin ambassador stood silent. "Very well," the judge said. "The court finds you guilty on all charges, and the sentence is death." Similar trials followed for the other council leaders who had approved the Omega device deployment. Some were executed, others received life imprisonment. A few who had opposed the most extreme measures were given lighter sentences. The galaxy watched. Some species protested that humans had no right to judge the council. Others remained silent and considered what had happened. The council had ruled through assumed superiority. Humanity had overthrown them through demonstrated capability. That was a lesson every species understood. With the council dissolved, humanity moved quickly to establish new governance. The Galactic Confederacy was announced 6 months after the war ended. President Okonkwo addressed the galaxy from Earth. The old council ruled through fear of what might happen if you disobeyed, and we will not repeat there. Mistakes and the Confederacy is voluntary, and any species may join, and any species may remain independent. But we will enforce one rule. No species may attack another, and trade will be free, and disputes will be settled through negotiation, and those who break these rules will face the full might of humanity. And we do not seek to rule you, but we will not allow you to rule each other through violence. The response was mixed. 23 species applied for Confederacy membership immediately. 12 remained independent, but signed non-aggression pacts. 8 withdrew into isolation. 3 attempted to form their own alliance. Humanity watched all of it carefully. Earth's orbital shipyards continued building warships. The lesson of the Council's fall was clear. Peace required the capability to enforce it. The Vrin homeworld presented a unique challenge. The species was confined to their planet and cut off from space. They were slowly starving. Their orbital infrastructure had provided food production for billions. Now those billions depended on planetary agriculture that could not support them. Some human commanders argued for allowing the Vrin to suffer. They had started the war, but Catherine disagreed. "We do not make war on civilians," she said, "and we are better than they were. Earth sent food shipments and medical supplies. Human engineers helped the Vrin rebuild basic infrastructure. But the quarantine remained. You murdered our ambassador." Catherine told the Vrin planetary government, "And your people will pay that price for generations. And you will remain on this world, and when your children's children have learned the cost of unprovoked aggression, perhaps we will discuss lifting the restrictions." It was harsh, but it was measured. The Vrin survived, but they would never threaten anyone again. A year after the war ended, Catherine stood at a memorial ceremony on Earth. A massive monument had been erected in Geneva, where the old United Nations headquarters once stood. It bore the names of every human who had died in the conflict. Ambassador Sarah Chun's name was carved at the top. She went seeking peace, Catherine said in her dedication speech. And they gave her death, and she became the spark that ignited humanity's fury, and because of her sacrifice, we are now the strongest power in the galaxy, and we will use that power to ensure that no other diplomat dies the way she did, and no other species faces extinction for seeking equality. Thousands attended the ceremony. Humans and aliens stood together. The Kelhari ambassador approached Catherine afterward. "Your species has accomplished in 30 years what took us thousands," the Kelhari said. How? Catherine considered the question. "We learned early that the universe is hostile," she replied. "Our own world taught us that lesson through wars and disasters and extinction events, and we learned to adapt or die. And when we reached the stars, we did not forget those lessons. Other species forgot," the Kalahari said. "Yes," Catherine agreed. "The Council forgot what it meant to fight for survival, and they thought their age gave them strength, and they were wrong." The Kalahari nodded slowly. "Some of us think humanity will become what the Council was," the alien said. Catherine looked at the memorial and Sarah Chung's name. "Perhaps," she admitted. "Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, and that is why we build monuments like this, and we remember what we fought for, and as long as we remember the cost, we will not become tyrants. She hoped that was true. Time would tell. Admiral Okonkwo commanded the Confederacy Defense Force from his flagship Eternal Vigilance. The ship patrolled the border regions where independent species might come into conflict. His mission was to prevent wars before they started. 3 months into his patrol, he received a distress call. A Threxian colony was under attack by raiders from the Gorvak tribes. The Gorvaks were one of the species that had remained independent. Okonkwo brought his battle group to the colony in 4 hours. The raiders fled immediately. "Should we pursue?" his tactical officer asked. "No," Okonkwo said, "but transmit a message to the Gorvak leadership." The message was clear. The Threxian colony is under Confederacy protection, and further attacks will be considered acts of war and we destroyed the Galaxy Council in 6 weeks. And we can destroy the Gorvak tribes in 6 days and choose wisely. The Gorvaks sent an immediate apology and offered reparations. They also applied for Confederacy membership. They learned quickly, Okonkwo's executive officer observed. "They learned from observation," Okonkwo replied, "and they saw what happened to those who fought us." Similar incidents occurred across the galaxy. Each time humanity responded with overwhelming force if needed. But more often the threat of force was enough. The galaxy was learning a new reality. Humanity would enforce peace, not through diplomatic pressure, but through demonstrated capability. 5 years after the war, Catherine Okonkwo stood in the same council chamber where Sarah had died. It had been converted into the Confederacy Assembly Hall. Representatives from 41 species sat in the chamber. They were debating trade regulations. No weapons were present. No threats were made. Disagreements were settled with words. A journalist approached Catherine after the session. "Madam President," the journalist asked, "some critics say humanity has become what the Council was, and we enforce our will through military might. And is this true?" Catherine considered the question carefully. "The Council killed one envoy and thought themselves safe," she replied. "We killed their fleets and offered their civilians mercy, and that is the difference, and we do not rule through fear of what we might do, and we rule through memory of what we did do and our promise to only do it again to those who forget." "And what did you do?" the journalist pressed. Catherine looked at the chamber and the peaceful debate occurring inside. "We showed the galaxy that humanity will not be threatened, and we will not be dismissed, and we will not allow others to be threatened or dismissed either, and we do not seek to rule, but we will not allow tyrants to rule in our place." She paused. "The council fell because they forgot that power requires responsibility, and they wielded power without consequences, and we will not make that mistake. And every ship we build and every weapon we deploy reminds us of the cost, and as long as we remember, we will not become what they were." The journalist seemed satisfied with that answer. Catherine returned to Earth the next day. She visited Sarah Chun's grave. "We did it," Catherine said quietly. "The galaxy is at peace, and not because everyone agrees, but because everyone knows the cost of war." She placed flowers on the grave. "I hope you would approve," Catherine added. The wind rustled through the memorial garden. Catherine liked to think it was Sarah's way of answering. On the edge of known space, a human deep space monitoring station detected something unusual. A ship was approaching from outside the galaxy. It was unlike any design in the Confederacy database. The station commander sent an immediate alert to Earth. Admiral Okonkwo received the message while on patrol.